Hello, everyone. This is Alfredo Abate, your current Chicago Oracle Users Group President. Welcome to today's webinar. As an attendee, you'll be in listen-only mode. You can ask questions in the chat window, which we will monitor. All questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. We'll also be streaming live on our YouTube channel, and the recording will be available there to view shortly after the presentation is finished. It's great to be here with you today virtually, as the group hasn't met in person since last August. For those that are new to the Chicago Oracle Users Group, we welcome you. Traditionally, our group meets between 4 to 6 times per year in various locations around the Chicagoland suburbs for presentations as well as hands-on workshop by Oracle experts, ACEs, and authors. With the restrictions in place due to COVID, we decided to go virtual to continue to deliver awesome technical content to our members and even our non-members. Today is our 13th webinar in a series of 20 that we'll be holding until November 18th. You can look at our entire schedule on our website and register for all our remaining webinars. And our website, as you can see in front of you now, is coug.us. Our user group runs completely unfunded. Our members don't pay any dues, and our meetings have always been free. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, OApsNet Partners, for providing the Zoom webinar platform. They are an Oracle Gold partner and systems integrator, with specialties in areas of financial business solutions based on Oracle applications, both on-premises and in the cloud. They provide services in the areas of AP automation, Apex development, database upgrades, and administration. Next week, don't miss our webinar with Oracle ACE Director, Jim Sabrinsky, on What's Your Superpower? Mine is machine learning with Oracle Autonomous DB. You can register for that on our website right now. Today, we are delighted to have Oracle ACE Director Cannell present to us on Apex Interactive Grids, Standardize for Productivity and Sanity. Hi, Karen, welcome.
Hi, Alfredo. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop my share and hand it over to you. I think you should be able to share your screen now.
All right. I have to open up my little, open up. I minimized my thing. Oh, come on. I didn't want to hit the close. Ah, all right. We'll do this the hard way. There we go. There's my button. And share. There we go. So thank you everyone for being here. I love doing this presentation because I've been working with interactive grids for a while, and there seems to be, I think in general, this sort of mind shift from interactive reports where we had a lot of checkboxes and we could do whatever we wanted with those checkboxes, and it just magically things appeared and disappeared. But with interactive grids, Oracle is giving us a new level of stuff to play with, and thus this presentation. So I think it's important that we use standards across the board, and in particular for interactive grids, just to keep us as developers sane going forward. And I also want to thank you to Alfredo for inviting me, and happy to be presenting for Chicago. Some of you guys know me. I am TH Technology. I do Oracle consulting, and for the last few years, that's almost 100% Apex and analytic views and pretty much everything that goes on behind the scenes in the database. I don't know how I got here. I'm a mechanical engineer that got dumped into code. And I am ODTUG Vice President right now. We have elections coming up. Please watch for emails. Volunteer for your user groups to keep this kind of material going. I love the 20 in 2020. Keep this stuff going takes volunteers. So I'm sure Alfredo will be reaching out and dive in, help out your user group, keep this stuff going. On another note, there's a little dot in here somewhere. That's me swimming. That's my Sanity place. That's one of them. That's my away Sanity place. We're in a crazy time with we're in IT, so we're unaffected, quote unquote. We work from home and everything's fine. And I think everyone online here will agree that's not fine. So it's more important that you find your happy place, your sanity place, and use it. We cannot be online on 100% of the time, and we can't not be affected by what else that's going on in the world. So I wish everyone to stay safe, do whatever you have to do to flatten the curve, stay vigilant so we can get back to doing these kinds of things in person. This is where I would love to say, okay, who's got what experience and on what versions are you? And since I can't see you, I'm going to make some assumptions that um, everyone's got some experience with Apex or using interactive grids, maybe most of you a year or more, that you're all on versions 5.1 and higher because that's where interactive grids came in. And you're fair to Midland. I don't expect that we have, Dan McGann's and Scott Wesley's out there that write JavaScript in their sleep. So that's kind of how this is geared to. And the whole point is to get you to standardize your interactive grids. And I'm going to show you a little bit of why and how and some best practices. Anytime I talk on Apex, and particularly with grids, what the Apex team has done is they've given us a sandbox with Apex, and with every new release, they're giving us new and greater toys to play in, and we can use those toys in the sandbox, and that makes our lives easier. We can always go outside of the sandbox, and a lot of us do. Back to HTMLDB, we had to go outside the sandbox a lot. If you go outside the sandbox, you are on your own for maintenance, for support. It may or may not work when you upgrade. And with interactive grids, the first few releases, when we had we had no documented APIs, the underlying code did change and things broke from release to release. So if you do have to do things non-declaratively in Apex, which means you're stepping outside the sandbox, use the documented APIs as much as you can. Apex is a low-code development platform that lets you just point, click, and voila, you have a wonderful application that does everything you meant. Well, not all the time. And when you talk about interactive grid customizations, where we start doing things with JavaScript, we're leaving low code behind. Thus a need to standardize, because you don't want to have to be copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, or rewrite, worse, the same code all the time. A little bit of background on grids. Those of us from HTMLDB and on will tell you that we had lots of gripes with tabular forms. Lots of gripes with interactive reports, mainly how come we can't edit them? Why can't you blend the two? And so they did. The Apex team did that. They are great, and many, many thanks to them for doing that. Now they came up with interactive grids, and the direction is that interactive reports and tabular forms will be replaced by interactive grids. It's not going to happen. The interactive reports are not going to go away until everything you can do in an interactive report can be done in interactive grids. And just recently, this latest release, there's the drill to links for interactive grids. That's one more step along the way. There's still not a pivot. Will they ever do a pivot? I don't know. But that's the direction. So there's no way out of learning interactive grids. You got to go there. And if there's anyone out there that's creating a tabular form now, just don't do that. Use grids, adapt, and you say, well, it doesn't look right. Well, I'm going to give you some hints to help you along. In order to follow and better grasp what I'm going to show you in the next few minutes here, it's really helpful to understand interactive grid architecture. And John Snyder's, even before interactive grids were released, wrote this interactive grid under the hood series where he explains the architecture. I'm going to tell you the architecture in 30 seconds. Everything in blue on this page is a JavaScript widget. Yes, when they built interactive grids, they moved to, it's the first big element within, actually the second if you include charts, but interactive grids are the first homegrown Apex element that is mainly a JavaScript widget. So everything in blue is a widget, and you can see the interactive grid itself, the icon view, chart view, detail view, all these, the grid record, these are all different widgets. OJ chart is built by the Jet team, that's why it's in dots. Key to what we need to really be key on, anything in yellow is a module, like Apex item is a module. Anything in green is an instance of that module. What this tells me right here, every column in an interactive grid is the same as an Apex item. That is absolutely huge. That's the thing that makes it possible for you to do cascading list of values on columns in an interactive grid. And anyone who had to do cascading list of values on columns in tabular forms will tell you it ain't fun. Now we can do that declaratively. Down the bottom here, every time you see model, think data set. The other thing you used to do with tabular forms, and to a smaller degree with grids, is work with PL/SQL arrays. And anytime we had to do any customizations on our tabular forms, we were doing PL/SQL array logic, and we got used to doing that, and we were wizards with that more than we ever wanted to be. Now all our data is in this JavaScript model, and we'll see that a little bit in the code. So every time you see model, think data set. Okay, and I really, for those people that like to know the stuff under the behind the scenes, it's great. You know, breakfast reading, bedtime reading, hard like software, read all those Apex things. It's really a great source of information. That said, this is a low-code environment. Do it declaratively first, wherever you can. We are working in Apex. And don't get me wrong, there are lots of declarative settings in interactive grids. Just the edit, lost update, add that row if it's empty, add, update, delete, who's allowed to do what when. I really like how they built the authorization in there. Different performance settings. Do I want to select things automatically? Fewer pagination settings, but when you get in there, you don't need all the other ones that we used to have. How many people set your when no data found message? It's a real simple setting that means a lot to end users. Toolbar things, fewer selections here, but use them. Lots of stuff, downloads, CSV separators, headings on your columns, layout, alignments. If you haven't looked at all these declarative settings, look at them and use them. Not only that, in terms of standards, make sure you're consistent in how you use them. Now, not everything is declarative. Something as simple as turn the whole column header off, not declarative. Add and remove toolbar buttons. And this is where we're really spoiled with interactive reports. We used to be able to point click, and that option just dropped out for that column. Add and remove action menu options, same thing. We're spoiled with interactive reports. To do the same now, we have to add code. And yep, there's this JavaScript word in every single thing. The way to customize here is mainly with JavaScript code. And a lot of you are saying, what the heck? I didn't sign up to be a JavaScript developer. Well, I think it's the way of the world going forward. With Apex, you'll see more of these JavaScript widgets as they introduce new and neat features within Apex. So by adding these widgets, it allows us to do more declaratively, but to do customizations, we're going to have to learn a little bit of JavaScript. And I guarantee you, anyone who has worked with tabular forms and PL/SQL arrays and done all that logic will be able to learn and adapt to the level of JavaScript required to do interactive grid customizations. So most grids are a combination, as we know, and we can do things like get rid of the whole toolbar, just give them a filter button. And maybe we want to add our own custom help button and bring the filter up out of the actions menu. Maybe we want to add things to our row action menu that just does whatever. And you'll see these hello examples and super simple examples. We people that present, we give you really, really simple examples. A, because we want them to work in our demonstrations, and B, because we want to focus on the fact that you can do something, not on how elaborate the something you want to do is, or the something that you could do is. So you'll probably want to put something a lot more elaborate than hello world in your row actions menu, but you certainly can. You certainly can, and the simple examples get the point across. This is an example of someone didn't like the delete button hidden, so they brought it up, and we'll talk about that example more. This is an interesting example. This is where the action menu is totally redone to be icons, and I just want to note here that this rating menu, this rating thing, this is just an item. Because it's an interactive grid and every row is an item, this is standard. This is I had a plugin for the star rating, and that's just a standard thing in an interactive grid now. Here is the customization over to the left in that toolbar. So why customize? I give 5 different developers the same problem. Make me a grid on the employee table. I'm going to get 5 different grids. And even if I have 5 developers in the same application, I'm still going to get 5 different grids. Also consider 1 developer on 5 different days, or maybe first thing in the morning and 10 o'clock at night you had to go in and finish one. I'm going to get 5 different grids, unless you're very, very disciplined and have standards and apply them. 1 developer, 5 different applications. Again, I may get 5 different grids. Slight differences, but our end users rely on consistency. So we need standards, and we also need sleep and coffee and sanity as well. So just a few examples here. I am going to jump into my application now. Where am I? This is a sample application I have out there. I can send it to you at the end of this presentation. Just send me an email or DM me on Twitter. This is in my always free cloud. You can tell by this super long thing up at the top there. And this is an interactive grid demo app that has a lot of stuff in it in terms of charts and APIs and events and customizations. We're just going to focus on this standardizing thing. And what I wanted to show you, I did that. I said, okay, let's make 5 different grids. And here's where I'd ask, can everyone see this? I hope you can. I added a few columns here just to show a few options, but basically this is our employee table that we've been using since the 80s. Basic standard interactive grid. Grid 1 pretty much took all the defaults, didn't do anything. Grid 2, this person, say we give it to 5 different people, did some formatting, changed some names, did some different things with these commission eligible, raise eligible. One's a switch, one's a select list, one's a different select list. Why aren't they the same? Did some alignment, did some different, made the height different, used scroll. Okay, actually said add emp instead of add row, which is the default. This one kind of did a mix of things, did that same scroll, but there's only 18 rows. Can't we see them all? And then this guy really went to town with the template options because he liked that maximize button. And, it's the same report. Why doesn't it look the same? That's my point. Well, you'd have to either have some standards that you apply across your organization or apply for yourself to make these all look the same and keep your end users same. And trust me, if you have end users like mine, and I love my end users because they keep me employed, they want consistency. They would go nuts if I gave them, 4 different grids on the same table that all look different. People like consistency. So um, let me go back to here and finish up. So you get the idea. There was different edit modes, different validation messages, different pagination. There's all kinds of ways we can do things different. And it's normal. We don't want our end users looking like this. That's just not right. So our reasons to standardize are for the end user experience. Number one, we want users to go to an interactive grid and say, it's an interactive grid. I know what to do here. I got it. And that's how we like them to feel when we get to our Apex apps that we put out there for them. If we don't give them that, they're like, oh, geez, Karen, what the heck was she doing that day? It must have been, a bad day. Right? We want our end users sane and happy. We also want to make our life easier. We got everyone has more and more to do with less and less. We want to make our stuff easier and our maintenance easier, and we want to stay sane. So things to standardize: column names, types, order, size, the toolbar configuration, button names. Something I pointed out as simple as add row versus add employee. It's very simple to say add employee, add department. It's a declarative setting. Use it. Um, we have buttons with icons now with the latest Apex versions. If you use buttons with icons, make sure the icon is either consistently on the left or the right. Use consistent icons for save, for add, for delete. It sounds like a simple thing, but be consistent. It's a nice touch, but be consistent. Nothing, and our end users will pick up these little idiosyncrasies faster than we will. Use the same pagination. Use the same number of rows displayed. Use the same shading if you use shading. There's no magic formula here. It's you need to actually sit down with yourself and your end users or with your team and your management and say, this is what I recommend and why, and come up with a standard and follow it. As a developer, it makes it faster for you to build because there's no guessing, there's no reinventing the wheel. You have a list of directions to follow, it becomes a habit. You can use a common code base, common settings, and when you get to the place where you need to write JavaScript, use your JavaScript experts. So this is a slide I really shouldn't even have to write, but basically it should just say standards. But yes, I have to say have standards and use your standards and share those standards with everyone on your team and make sure you all have the same stuff going. If one person needs to add something, make sure it gets saved with everyone. And again, really, really, really use your standards. So we talked about this, the features, the template, the column. I really want to jump back to this app and tell you a thing that really got me going on this. I was working for a client and they were doing a big upgrade from 4.1 to, what was it, 19.2, I think? One of those. Anyhow, first time we're seeing interactive grids. And I'm doing my pieces and my other work. And I actually sat in on a review of an application that had a lot of tabular forms and they hadn't been upgraded. And I said, why? And the developer said, well, because there's no delete button. And I can't put something in front of my end users that doesn't have a delete button. And I said, whoa, 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 there is a delete button. It's right there in the row action menu. Did you notice that row action menu? And he said, I can't have my end users. I can't retrain them. which is A, wrong. If you do an upgrade, you need to train your end users, even if everything looks the same. But B, I said, well, then move that delete button up to the up to the menu. And he's, I can't do that. It's not declarative. There's no way to do that. So I said, okay, give me a few minutes. And what I did is I came up with a menu, and I went into attributes, and this is where, and I'm going to steal my code that I just happen to have set here, and I added it to the JavaScript initialization code. And let me show you it now. Where did I learn this? I looked at the sample applications. I read hardlikesoftware.com. I looked at the interactive grid cookbook application. And so basically I read the directions and learned that I can, in this JavaScript initialization part of my interactive grid, I can redefine my toolbar. So in this case, I wanted the search field and the search button. I wanted an add employee button, and I named it add employee. And I wanted that delete button. I said, give me a button that is selection delete. And then I also need my save button and my cancel button and the reset report. So I added that in. I say save and I run. And now I have an interactive grid that has a delete button, so I can select just the same as in my tabular form. I would select rows and then say delete, and it will delete those. Now I can roll it back, or I can save at this point. Refresh. I also moved the refresh cancel button up there, and it will undo that for me. Undid that delete. So by moving these two buttons up, I can now go back, and my add employee button, I can now go back to this person, and I did, and say, okay, here, use this and do your upgrades. And now user training is minimal because now they can, he didn't want to give them the whole toolbar. He just wanted delete, refresh, save, and add row. Is this a recommended setting? No, this is just an example that I created for one person for one particular case. Now, he probably had a whole bunch of at least 20 or 30 interactive grids that he had to do with this too. So one way is to go in here and copy this code to every interactive grid. That gets old really, really quick. So what we did instead here is I said, look, I'll give you a way to do this in a global way. So the way I did that is, again, by reading features in the Interactive Grid Cookbook, reading things in hardlikesoftware.com, looking at the sample applications. I said, hey, this has been done before. I can create this JavaScript file, the standards file, and in it, I have this function at the top, or namespace essentially. So here's my source function, and in it I have a whole bunch of interactive grid settings, and some of them are class based. If this region having this static ID has the class sequence number, then add row header sequence. If it has the class no reorder, then turn reorder columns off. If pagination type is set, then only show 3 max links and don't show the first. So you get the idea. So I built one of these files, and I have a couple classes in here, and we'll go over. But this add, delete, save looks very much like that code that I just dropped into that other, into that delete only grid, that add, delete, save grid. As a matter of fact, it's exactly the same code, but now I've put it in this JavaScript file that I have included in my application. So let's go to the application, edit application properties, and they move this. Where is it? It's in my files. Not there, not there, not there. Where's my files? They moved it. I've got a screenshot of it, so I'm not going to waste. There it is. In my JavaScript file, this is my included file. So now anything in this application can use the functions that are in that file. So now I'm going to go to this particular page. And on this particular interactive grid, in the attributes section in that JavaScript initialization code, which is where all our customizations go, I need to add the reference to that file. You don't need it in your help text. I just have it in my help text in the sample application so that I'm not typing it freehand during a presentation, which we all know is disastrous. So now I've included that file. And nothing happens. I just want to show you nothing has happened yet. Still looks the same. But now what happens when I go to my grid and I go to CSS classes and do something like add del save. How did I hope it's that. Never type anything. Yes, that's right. Okay, and let me copy these guys at the same time. So I added add, delete, save as a class, and now I have that same configuration. Now the value of this is I can give this file, this include file, and this setting to any one of my developers. They don't have to know JavaScript at all. I just give them this. I have my JavaScript experts come up with the configurations that I want them to use. Then all I have to do is hand out this, the file, include the file, and then tell my developers what classes are there to use. And anyone can do this, add a class name, and get this end result. Really, really cool. And maybe they want a filter only grid. And they can very, very easily switch. And now we have a filter only grid. Now this one, obviously not editable at this point, but we got a good thing going here, right? So this, I can even come back into these same different grids that were, had all the different things. Now, this isn't going to help me with my names of my columns or the order of my columns. Those I still need the discipline to either use the attribute settings on my structures or just tell my developers this is how things need to be configured. But in here, I can do this on a couple different grids here. I can go into attributes and make sure they all have that file name. And again, I stick this in weird places just so it's handy when I need it. We add that, and then we go to the grid itself and CSS classes. So they've really made it easy here for us to do these things. And that's the beauty of standardizing these customizations, is now they pretty much got the same button look for all of them. Notice on this one, delete's not allowed for this particular user. There are still pagination things that I would need to turn on either by another class or other settings, but I got a lot of the way there without having my end users having to write a stitch of JavaScript, and that's really huge. Now, there's some ways you can shoot yourself in the foot here, and I'll stick with this same example where we know how we've got this done. We've got we're using the same JavaScript thing down here, and we're using the same class. Now so here's my code. Now if someone gets fancy and wants to do things, what was my example here? Say they wanted to add their own code here. Let me look at this. There's my filter. There's some more stuff. Say I just want to add this stuff in here. It might not work with the rest of my stuff. So you have to be careful on what you ask for and know how things interact. So now what happened is I added more JavaScript intending to add settings, because I as a developer had read that I could do this, just sort of hide actions here. But that broke my whole thing. And if I there's a JavaScript error on the page, I'm not seeing that setting, the little red thing down the bottom, but that's essentially what has happened there. See if I can get rid of that. Nope, not gonna let me do it. So you have to be careful of how things interact. And if you use the interactive grid standardization function, make sure that you use things consistently. You'll want things to go into that function. Something I also want to show you is, say I wanted to swap from, this one has the sequence only and then no reorder in it. Say I wanted to do a filter only grid. So what will happen here? Will I get the filter only, or will I get the add, delete, save? Who says filter only? Who says add, delete, save? Well, what's going to happen is my page is not going to refresh. Oh, come on. Did I not save this out here? Oh, I know what it is. Let's get rid of that. Never do these things on the fly. There we go. I got the delete selected. And the reason is, and it doesn't matter what order I do these in. If I change this to have filter only last, and add, delete, save first, it's still going to do the same thing. And why is that? Why is that? Because in my file, the add, delete, save is last. Filter only is first. So it says, as it's reading through this file and executing things, it basically did the filter only thing, and then it did the add, delete, save thing and overwrote the filter only thing. So you need to be careful how things in your file are positioned and how things are meant to work together or not. The other thing I need to show you here that's real important is somebody as a developer can come in here, go to attributes and say, I want edit totally off. And not knowing, I don't need this edit thing. As a matter of fact, wait, I want edit on, right? Because that's my add, delete, save part. I've got that configured, right? But I don't want this toolbar. Let's get rid of this toolbar, right? That's all I care about. We don't need the toolbar anymore. We just need what I did. Well, I just told it to get rid of the toolbar. And so it did. Your declarative settings always trump the settings of, basically what happened is it ran the code and it built my toolbar, and then it said, oh yeah, but she said she doesn't want a toolbar, so it turned it off. So be careful that you don't shoot yourself in the foot there on that kind of stuff. Very easy to, you need to be aware of how the declarative settings interact with the JavaScript code that's in your files, in your customization files if you use them. And there's a myriad of ways they can interact. You need to standardize on columns too, the column headings. By default, we can do everything. You may not want that. And so I can go in and turn some settings off, but I don't always get what I want. I don't want people to get rid of empno. I don't want them to get rid of name. Now, wait, how'd I do this? This is what I really want. I want them to not be able to do anything here, right? So let's look at how we did that on the column headings. And the same principle applies, but for columns. On empno, I haven't done anything in this. So column filter, is that enabled or not? Enable users to, and well, this is funny. As soon as I can't sort, you can't control break aggregate. But if I turn that off, turn that on, it's really weird how these work. But you can't control break aggregate if you can't sort. So enable users to hide. If I turn all these off, I don't get rid of everything, as I showed you before. I still have more things that I can do in empno. And so help and freeze, it just doesn't do what I want. So how'd I do it on job? Ename, I had declaratively turned everything off already. Doesn't quite cut it. But when I wanted everything off, I had to go into this JavaScript initialization code yet again, and here's this no header activate true. And so this, I would have to copy to all my columns in order to get that same behavior on all these other columns. And that may be a standard that you want or not. You may want certain things on or off in your column headers. Again, it's another thing to care about. I didn't hit manager, I hit these guys down here. But I can still move it. Maybe you don't want that. And the way we worked on that was back in, because this is a grid wide, this was back in the JavaScript standardization file. You may have seen me reference that no order, no reorder. So here's I've included this reference to the config file here. And if I come down and add the class no reorder, and hopefully I spell it right, that will get rid of my reorder on the columns. Is now you can't reorder them. So lots and lots and lots of stuff for you to think about here. How are we doing? We got a few minutes left. So lots of different options to standardize. There is no hardcore direction of this is how you have to standardize. You have to work that out in your own organization. You have to work out what you need to do. I showed you do it declaratively first, but if you add those combinations, be careful of the declarative settings in combination with your customizations. Be careful of your customizations in combination with your customizations. And I showed you those examples. I showed you those examples. There are plugins out there now that will help you with these JavaScript customizations. And I gotta say, those are wonderful things. But just using a plugin does not standardize. It just makes it easier to customize things. And if you don't have standards, it makes it easier for your developers to customize things in different ways. I want to put a plugin for the JavaScript APIs in the presentation. If you guys download the presentation, there is lots of examples in here. There's lots of illustrations with the code that goes with them. I can give you the sample app that has the same examples and the same code in them. Please, 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 if you make customizations, use the documented APIs. And as of 18.1, they gave us these wonderful JavaScript APIs. I encourage you to go out there. They're wonderful nighttime reading, or maybe you're a coffee person, read in the morning with your coffee. Some examples: interactive grid copy default toolbar if I was going to extend a toolbar. Find the toolbar group to add things if I was adding to the search column. And the search button, that would be the actions 1 area. How do I know that? I read the APIs, I read Hard Like Software, I read things in the Interactive Grid Cookbook, I read and studied the sample app. So there's no shortcuts here. There's lots of samples here. Model, that's my data, get the value of the current record for the on leave column. If it equals yes, so I have a Boolean on leave. If on leave, maybe I shade a value, shade the rest of the thing. You'll see this model get value all over the place. All this is doing is a little add in JavaScript. I think you guys can follow that. Apex item salary get value. Simple stuff. If you can read PL SQL, you can read this stuff. This section I'm going to skip over. It has examples of the JavaScript customization code to do all these different types of customizations. I leave that in here. I've done that in other presentations. I want to go here. What I want to cover to wrap up here is the way we standardize the JavaScript part of these customizations. Is we created a JavaScript function in a JavaScript file. If you download the app, there's a beginning one. Again, anything I present here is not a standard. It's stuff that worked for 1 or 2 particular organizations, and it's stuff that works for demonstration purposes. None of this stuff is hardened for production, so that is on you. So I create the file, I include the file at the top of my application. I reference the JavaScript function in the advanced JavaScript code area of the grid, and then I add my classes on the grid. And the beauty of this is not everyone has to know JavaScript at all. So there's references to the file, my different classes, and that's where you actually stick the reference to the file. I reference the function in that file, and then I add classes. Very, very simple. And then we have happy minions, or nowadays we have minions with masks on. I showed you what happens if there's a mistake. You just get no grid at all. Don't panic. You just have a JavaScript error to find somewhere. And they, of course, they give you their very, very helpful message. I find doing things one at a time when I'm working with JavaScript, so I know the last 1 or 2 things I did, which are the things that caused the error. So best practices for adding JavaScript to Apex. Again, my demo application, everything you saw in this presentation does not follow best practices. It's designed to be able to show you things quickly. Read more in the introduction to JavaScript API. Read the APIs, at least the ones that you're going to use. There's really good information in there. So you put the bulk of your code in the JavaScript files, minify. They give you the directions on what you need to do. Thank you for hanging in for this. I feel like I throw a lot of information at you, but it's really cool. Not everyone has to write a ton of code. Reuse things as much as you can. Have your standards, use them. It will take time to figure out what are the best settings for your applications, for your end users. You may have a set of 2 or 3. This is what we use for editable grids. This is what we use for most of our other grids. In certain cases where we really want to lock things down, we use these settings. When you have to write JavaScript configuration changes, create that one file, share it, and write it so that you've got that one function and a set of classes. Be careful you don't shoot yourself in the foot overlapping, but it's really, I think it's really fun when you get into it. It's really powerful what you can do here. So bottom line, stay sane and keep your users happy. We like happy minions, or this is what they look like today. And just the tip of the iceberg for all of this interactive grid stuff. They are adding more to the APIs and more stuff all the time. So at this point, I should have left a few more minutes for questions. At the end here, there's just more references. You know, go out and use things and do stuff and have fun. And Alfredo, are there questions in here?
There is one question in the the chat box.
Okay.
I can read it to you. It says, how about creating a custom template and adding the JS code to that template?
That would work. That would achieve the same thing. I personally like having the JavaScript file separate. It's best practice to include your JavaScript in a separate file, and it allows you to minify that JavaScript code and just follow best practices. But of course, a custom template would follow the same thing. I would recommend that you have a custom template that has, as part of that template, include the minified JavaScript file and go from there. So,
Okay.
and yeah, so any other questions at any time, you guys are always welcome to email me. See if I can move this little thing. You can DM me on Twitter. But I love doing this stuff. I am working on a way to have classes to set my column headings, because that would be like just, you know, the next natural step. And that's it. There's, again, if you do nothing else, get the slides, because there's a lot of references at the end and all those examples in the middle. And I am perfectly willing to wrap up the sample app and send everything on to you. If you extend it and have fun with it, then please share. That's the only condition. Apex is a sharing community. So I thank you all for attending. I'm happy to be lucky 13 in the COUG 20 in 2020. And I encourage you all to, as Apex developers, share your stuff. And I encourage you all to get involved with your user groups. They're more important these days, where we can't go to conferences and meetups the way we like to. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Karen. That was a great presentation. As Karen said, she's already shared the slides with me. Probably later tonight or tomorrow morning, we will have the COUG website updated with those links, as well as this video, which is on our YouTube channel. If you just type in Chicago Oracle Users Group in YouTube, you should be able to find us. And for those who missed the beginning, next week, our presenter is Jim Saprinsky, also an Oracle ACE director, and he's doing a presentation on what's your superpower. Mine is machine learning with Oracle Autonomous DB. So you can register for that, as well as our remaining webinars. So we'll see you next Wednesday at the same time at noon CST. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye now.